Hi, I'm DKS. I'm here in Studio 1 at Fluid Mastering. I'm one of 4 engineers that uses this room to do their mastering. And despite all using the same kit, we all have slightly different ways of using the kit. So this is an overview of my signal path, the specific kit that I use, and how I use it to get the massive sound that I get. So we start in the digital domain with the Vise DS1. This is traditionally a de-esser used for cutting vinyl. It's a very powerful de-esser, but it also has a compressor and a limiter built into it. And it's the limiter that I use it for. It's a very powerful, very powerful digital limiter. I've adapted the use of it slightly over the years to create a very unique sound. It's almost my signature, to be honest. I've spent a lot of time with this piece and I love it like a child. It really is my baby. I love this thing. I predominantly use it just for balancing out the image, especially since I moved to Fluid. It's more just to get a level playing field of the sound before I start EQing and adding extra compression and doing all the other stuff to it. So that's all I really use it for nowadays, but it's still just the shape of the music that it creates and the sound that it gives. I mean, it's great because it's transparent sound. If you don't use makeup gain, it's 100% transparent, which is very important for a lot of music that I use, that I work on. However, I do like the gain makeup does give an extra bit of character to it, so I do use that quite often. But yeah, that's where we start in the chain. Moving out of that, we go into the TC6000. This is another digital dynamic processor. However, I don't use any of the dynamics in it. I only use it for EQs. There's 2 EQs that I use it for. One of them's for mid-side processing, so if I want to mono the bass or widen the bass, if I want to take some shrillness out of the sides but leave the mid like top end there, if I want to carve out a little bit of mid but not the sides, I can do all of that within that. And the other EQ that I use in there is parametric EQ, just for notching out nasty frequencies. If there's usually around the bass, if you know, an 808 or a kick drum or a bass line or a bass guitar, if something's poking out on a specific frequency, I can notch that down just to balance the sound a bit. But that's all I really use it for. I don't do any drastic EQing, anything like that. I keep that for the analog. Once we come out of the TC6000, we come out of the digital domain altogether, we go into the analog domain, and that's where we stay until I print the final master. So the first bit of kit that we go into in the analog domain is the Manley Massive passive EQ. As the name suggests, it's a passive equalizer. It's made with metal film resistors, film capacitors, and hand-wound inductors that allow a very unique shaping of the timbre of the sound, and its tube stages can handle massive high frequency boosts without sibilance, and similarly in the low end you can get really great, you can add a lot of low without it getting muddy. So I've adapted it, like my use of it, I really use it just for the lower mids of tracks. It's where I'm getting massive power out of tracks that I wasn't able to get in my last studio, without muddying the picture. That's the beautiful thing about it. Just you do not get mud out of this thing. It's so clever. Occasionally I use some high shelves. It depends on the program. As I say, they're very unique because of the way that it's built, so you can withstand a lot of pushing them if you need to. But to be fair, especially with electronic music, it's very rare that you come across stuff that actually needs that. Certainly in my field, if I'm working on rock music or reggae, and it needs a little bit of a top end boost, then yeah, I do use them in that sense. But yeah, mostly for lower mid like power. That's what I use that for. So once we come out of that, we go into the Prism, the Masonic MEA2 mastering equalizer, which is pretty industry standard. You'll find it in most professional mastering studios. I use it mainly for adding air to the track, adding presence, but also for carving out. If there is mud in the mix, I can carve it out using this. Also, it's quite good for pronouncing bass drums and like punchy bits in the mix. It's good for that kind of thing as well. And that's all I really use it for. And after we come out of that, we leave the equalizers. We go into the compression side of things. And the first stage after the MEA2 is its brother unit, I suppose, the Prism Emel 2, which is Prism's compression unit, compressor, however you want to call it. The thing that I like about this is there's no variable threshold. You don't play with the threshold on this at all. It's all done with input gain. Now because of that, I don't actually use it as a compressor. Well, maybe like 10-20% of stuff if it needs it. But most of the time it's just for gain staging, which means that I can get an extra bit of level or take a bit of level out without affecting the other dynamic processes that I've got going on in the chain. So yeah, really just a gain staging part for me. However, if I do need it, if something does need a lot of compression, rather than just using the DS1 or like relying on one bit of kit, I can use that if I need to. Once we come out of the MLA2, we go into the Neve Portico 2 master bus processor, which is a parallel compressor, and what a unit. What an absolute unit. It's quality. This thing is quality. I mean, obviously all of Neve's equipment is just top level, but I really like this bit of kit. I hadn't used one before I got to fluid mastering, and since I've started using it and playing with it and working it out, I'm able to work on so many different types of music without the worry of over compressing this or I can't get enough level out of it. It's just giving me an extra stage, and having it at the end of my signal path gives a lot of flexibility without, you can compress stuff because it's parallel. I'm still keeping the transients, I'm still keeping the organic richness of the sound whilst boosting up all the low end information and creating a much bigger picture. What's great about this unit as well is that it does have a built-in limiter, but it's just one pot. All you have is the control. You can go from 0 to 100, and as you're doing it, it's intelligently changing release and threshold settings depending on the program. So you don't need to use much of it at all. To be honest, I don't use it that much, but if after the limiting from the DS1, anything that has happened, anything that might be poking out, it can just level that off and keep things tight. What's good about this is obviously it's an analog kit first of all, but it's on a different power supply voltage to a lot of other analog pieces, and it can go 21 dB I think above 0 VU. So you've got huge room to work with, and you can really, if you need to, you can really crank that, crank the level on tracks, especially EDM and all the bass music, all that kind of stuff, and drum and bass that really has to go loud. You can pump that bad boy loud and still maintain a really organic, rich, natural feel to the music. Obviously, having something like that going in to record the signal. So sorry, that's the last bit of kit that I use. From there we record into the Prism Sadie. Sadie is the mastering software that we record into, currently on version 6. And to get it into there we use the Prism ADA8 analog to digital converter. Now that, again, because of its power, first of all, it's all Prism. So Sadie's Prism, the converter's Prism, some of the analog kit's Prism, so the integration between it all is so smooth. But what's good about the ADA8 is it can take levels up to 12 decibels above full scale and soft clips them down to 0 dB to full scale, so you're able to capture the power of analog without blasting above 0 dB full scale. Obviously, if you go above full scale in the digital domain, the signal clips. That's end of story. Even 0.1 of a decibel above, it will clip. So the beauty of it is, yeah, you can maintain and withhold the power of analog and the loudness and the depth of analog, and this thing takes it down to 0 dB full scale nicely. Obviously, I'm talking about loud music when I talk about that. Not everything has to do that. I'm just pointing that out as something that's very unique and very good about that setup. So yeah, once we go into SADI, that's it. I don't use any plugins. I don't use any extra processing. I like to keep the signal as analog and raw as possible. Ultimately, you know, the whole idea of mastering is not to add too much of your own thing. It's to really emphasize the artist's original vision of the music, but you want to make sure that it's sounding good across all systems. Once it's going through the codec compressors of YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, all that kind of stuff, you want it to maintain its power. So that's why I don't use any digital processing after that. Keep it analog, keeps it raw. I'm able to get great sound because of the way that I use the DS1. I can get very, very loud signals with a very natural sound to them. And that's it. Once that's done, that's bounced down to a file. The other good thing about SADI is that it can bounce digital files, digital WAVs with ISRCs embedded into them, which I think that's been around for a few years now, to be fair, but certainly was something that I was moaning about for ages, not being able to do that. If you don't know what ISRCs are, there's a part on my website, link here, with lots of mastering terms explained, just very quick definitions of what it all means. ISRCs is one of the definitions that's in there, so you can find out what they are in more detail there. And that's it. Obviously, for monitoring, we have the beasts, these absolute bad boys, the PMC BB5s. They are PMC's flagship monitors. There really is nothing else like it in the world. They have much, much higher sound pressure levels than any other monitor available, and they can take frequencies as low as 17 Hertz and still take them without any distortion, no like warping of the image or pushing out here there. It's completely flat signal. And the important thing that I like about them is, yeah, obviously you can crank it if you want, you can listen to it loud and it's still very clean, but more importantly, when you're monitoring quietly, which is what you should be doing all of the time, and I'll have podcasts on that, you've got to protect the money makers. When you're monitoring quietly on these things, you've still got an absolute transparent, clean picture of what's going on with the music. So very, very important for mastering. You don't want to be monitoring too loudly, so you don't want to ruin your ears, but you also want to make sure, like, monitoring loudly, again, I've got a whole podcast going into this, but monitoring loudly, you don't know what other people are going to be hearing at the end of codec compression, what they're going to be hearing afterwards on the internet. So it's really important to be monitoring quietly, and that's why these things are so good, because even at quiet levels, you can hear exactly what's going on. So yeah, that's it. That's my mastering chain. I hope you've enjoyed the tour. Any questions, let me know. If you'd like to book me for mastering, check my website. All of my contact details are there. You can see some of the projects I'm working on. There's links to the Sound Control podcast, which is an in-depth look at why high quality music is important and not how. I think that those two things have been mixed up, and I think how you get high quality music is nowhere near as important if you don't know why you're getting it. So there's loads of information there, so stay in touch. If you do have questions, ask. If you do want to book me for mastering, check me out, and have a good day. Love you loads. Take care. Bye.